Yeah. Pro Fan Sports Podcast. Let's get it. Pro fans, tune into the program. Every single week, get the dope, fam. John on the mic, very flat too. Keep you updated, that's what we do. Pro fans, tune into the program. Pro fans, tune into the program. Pro fans, tune into the program. Every single week, get the dope, fam.
Yo, what to do, everybody? It's your boy, John Altidor with Pro Fan Sports Podcast. Back at you with another one with my boys, Vlad, Barry, and back on the show, man. It's Patriots play-by-play broadcaster for the last 9 years and 10 months. Bob Socci, Happy New Year's, man. Welcome back to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing great, John. Happy New Year to you and the rest of the crew. Guys, great to be with you. Thanks for having me tonight.
Absolutely, man. You know, we were talking about before we started recording how this week, you know, we got a meaningful game, and I've seen a question online. I think one of us posted it. Bob, as a play-by-play broadcaster, I'm sure you do, but you know, as a fan and, you know, as a follower of the team, do you want the Patriots to make the playoffs?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I've heard some people on my station and elsewhere say that it might not be the best thing for the Patriots to make the playoffs, but I don't believe that. Number one, and probably more selfishly, I love to call games. So the more games, the merrier that I'll be. But I think you know, it's for the program's sake. I think, you know, getting to the playoffs and winning meaningful games, you know, especially, you know, whether they go far or not, and chances are, you know, if they make the playoffs, they don't seem to have the makeup of a team that can go far, just the way the season is gone. When you think back to last year when they were beaten by Buffalo as well, you know, they had so much to work on after that game, and it seems like in a lot of ways they've gone backward this season, certainly on offense. But to me, it's still a building block. It's a building block for next year. It's important for the young players. Now, a couple of the key young guys this season who've really made an impact on this team as rookies or as second-year players, you know, some of those guys have been lost to injury now, like Jack Jones. You know, Marcus Jones, not sure what his status is going to be next week. But the thing about the development for those guys, you know, not just those two in particular, but their classmates and the other second-year players who've had increased roles this year, or guys that, you know, kind of got their opportunities a little bit later than earlier this season for the Patriots, and really came out, like Josh Uche, for example, who's really had a breakout season for them, healthy finally. To me, like playing important games with something on the line, pressure-filled games, when you're playing in a must-win, absolute must-win Week 18 against a team like Buffalo, there's a lot of value to that in terms of your growth and development individually, and obviously what you're playing for collectively. So I think it's a good thing. You know, I don't think it really has much of an impact on their draft status because it's not like you're in a position to take the top 1, 2, or 3 picks. You're kind of in that middle tier anyway. So to me, better to make the playoffs, even if it's a 1-game wild card playoff for you and you're done. To me, to at least have that experience and try to build from it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you because I think, you know, there's nothing better than playoff, you know, experience for, you know, quarterback and the guys around because, you know, they're trying to build on something here. And you did hit up on the draft because I think, you know, their record is going to be their record, and where they fall, that's where they're going to fall. You know, I did see some other concerns about making it to the playoffs. Somebody said, you know, if we make it to the playoffs and win a game or something like that, Bill Belichick might want to bring Matt Patricia back as offensive coordinator.
You know, it's funny, and I should have touched on that a little bit. It's one of my first response, but yeah, you know, it's a point that's been made, and I think it's certainly a point that I understand. I have a feeling that what changes need to be made, if they're going to be made, it doesn't matter whether they make the playoffs or not. I mean, I think we recognize, or at least we think we do, that those changes need to be made. And I have to imagine that within the organization, too, there's that sense. It's been pointed out by a couple of people, the Patriots, you know, in past transitions, whether they made the playoffs or not, Belichick did make necessary changes. After 2009, for example, that team got to the playoffs and they got wiped out by Baltimore in the wild card, and it was late in that season. It was documented by A Football Life, the NFL Films documentary. Bill realized that he had to make changes on that football team, that he was having a tough time getting to that team. Now, that was personnel-wise with the players. But I have to think that the way it's gone this season offensively, as dysfunctional as they've been, there's a recognition that there have to be changes made. Who knows what exists in terms of the thoughts of people in the front office, higher up in ownership. Albert Breer had a report in the last 48 hours or so as we talk. He was on NBC Sports Boston and had a report that, certainly there's an awareness within the organization, whether Bill has that right now or not. But, Bill didn't want to talk about it on Monday. But I think, whether they win on Sunday against the Bills and get into the playoffs or not, those changes need to be made. The offense has really not improved in any way. I think that there's a lot of questions about the future of the quarterback, for sure, that we'll probably get to in this conversation. And those are questions that affect your future as a franchise. So I think that a long, hard discussion and an autopsy on the season that was going to take place whether they win on Sunday against Buffalo or not.
Yeah. Yeah, staying on the coaching situation, I've seen that in the perfect world, Bill O'Brien might come back and be the offensive coordinator. And, they're talking about Gerard Mayo maybe leaving and then Matt Patricia going back on the defense. When Matt Patricia was here on the defense, I didn't particularly like the defense then either. What are your thoughts about him going back on that side of the ball?
Yeah, I don't know what his role would be. I think a lot of it depends on if it's a guy like Bill O'Brien, does he want to come in and keep Matt as the offensive line coach? We're talking about hypotheticals. I don't know if Bill is indeed going to come back here or not. I think it certainly makes a lot of sense that he would be a leading candidate and that his name is being mentioned so frequently in reports, particularly if Belichick wants to go with someone he's familiar with and has trust in and a past relationship with. I don't know. I think to me, the difficult part of putting Patricia on defense now is you have Stephen Belichick who's there. And Stephen has been, along with Gerard, the guys who've not only prepared the game plan, but Stephen has been, it seems, primarily the play caller defensively. I would hate to see Gerard Mayo leave. I would hate to see him be the head coach of another team because I think he'd be a great ultimate successor eventually a successor here. But I could understand why, if he feels that the time is right, he would want to go elsewhere and be a head coach and not be the guy that stuck around to try to follow Bill Belichick. But that's something that remains to be seen. But I do think that when we're talking about Patricia and his future role, I mean, maybe Bill Belichick does believe that Matt Patricia can figure it out, and that if he and Joe Judge run it back, that they can improve on this year. And maybe he's earlier than the rest of us. But I think that I would expect that there are going to be changes made. And when an offensive coordinator comes in here, that offensive coordinator probably is going to want to have some of his own people in place too. So I think there's going to be a real domino effect. And it's not just going to involve shifting Matt or another coach, Joe Judge, into a different role. I think it's going to be something that's going to have a wider effect on the staff.
Sounds like there's going to be a lot of moving parts in the team in the next coming years. Do you anticipate anything happening quarterback-wise?
Well, I think we got to find out. I think today, I think Matt had a rebound late yesterday, just as he did against Cincinnati. Certainly, the first drive for the Patriots was promising. There were some throws that he made that reminded me of what we saw last year. But the inconsistency of yesterday's game alone, by his own admission after the game, he really struggled in the middle portion of that game. And now they've got a lot of issues as we're talking about. Pass protection, the offensive line, the concept of a lot of the plays, the execution of the plays, the spacing on the routes. It's just not a well-constructed offense right now. And there's a lot of things that have affected the quarterback play. But I don't think today, toward the end of year two with Mac Jones, you can say with a high sense of confidence that he is absolutely the guy that you want to commit to in the future. But I think you have to give him the chance to make progress off of year one with a better situation around him. And that means someone who's a more experienced offensive play caller and game planner as a coordinator, someone who has a good relationship with him as the quarterback's coach, who can, share experiences in that role as opposed to learning on the job, so to speak. And Joe and Matt have been targets, speaking of Joe Judge and Matt Patricia, in terms of criticism, really going back to the summer in local media circles. I don't mean to pile on in that respect, but I think that there is a difference when you have someone who's been around, quarterbacks his entire coaching career on the offensive side of the ball, and whether that's as the QB coach or that's the offensive coordinator, someone that can develop a relationship with your quarterback and try to not recreate, because you can't be Josh McDaniels, but at least get back to what Mac was comfortable with Josh last year in terms of your working relationship, why that relationship was successful. If you can try to find people in place to do that, then I think that helps him not only make progress, but also gives you a better evaluation of, okay, who is this guy as a player? What can we get out of him in season number 4, and should we commit to him for season number 5? Because that decision's got to be made really next year, whether they want to put a franchise, to exercise the 5th-year option on him or not, or whether they need to go out and look for another quarterback in the draft in the future. I still think he has a lot of promise. I believed in him last year. My confidence maybe isn't as great right now, but I still think you got to find out as an organization whether he truly is the guy.
I agree with you. I think, he's very young. This was only his 2nd year, and I think he needs, maybe at least 1 more year or 2 more years to prove that he's not the guy before moving on. Do you think just having a new offensive coordinator or new coaches around him is enough, or do we need more weapons around him as well?
Well, I'm of the mind. I think their skill group is better than they've performed, and it's a lot of people believe. But I also look at them and think they don't have some of the players that we've seen in other uniforms the last couple of weeks. Those kind of players. Now, Tyquan Thornton made a couple of nice plays in the game on Sunday, and I think the Patriots have actually drafted really well the last 2 years by and large. But when we're talking about that position, you're gonna have Devontae Parker and Nelson Aguilar, in all likelihood, aren't going to be here next year. The Kendrick Bourne situation is puzzling. Although again, yesterday, pre-snap penalty, a couple of other issues, maybe signaling to us why it's been so hard for him to get on the field and stay on the field at times. But I think the 2 guys that I mentioned for sure, I don't expect either one to be in a Patriot uniform playing out his contract, whether it's next week or in the playoffs, if the Patriots get there. So there are going to be changes in the wide receiver group. And I mentioned Tyquan because I think about him as a 2nd-round pick. And then I look at what the Bengals have when they came in here, not just Jamar Chase, who's a stud as a top 5 first-round pick, but T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. And, I take a look at, what we saw from the Dolphins. Now, it's going to be hard to get a guy like Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle, obviously. But I think, the kind of speed that those guys have and the skills that they have where you can throw a 10-yard pass and the guy can take it 84 yards. I mean, the Patriots don't have that. I mean, Tyquan has the speed right now, but I don't know if he has, the physical build to be, a durable guy who goes inside, and whether he does or not, they need, I think, some complement pieces there. And I think at tight end, it's been really disappointing, the lack of production at that position. I would imagine they're going to run it back with both of those guys next year. And I think at running back, they're in a pretty good situation with Ramadre, obviously a great player. I think probably their best offensive player from game 1, up until the last couple of weeks. And, I don't know what Jacoby's future holds. He's a guy going back to the wide receiver spot. This is it for him in terms of his contract. I would love to see him come back. I think it'd be a great loss if he winds up in another uniform. I think that, the other running back situation I think intrigues me, that I don't know what we're going to see how it's resolved, is Damien Harris. He's in the last year of his deal. I find it hard to believe that he's going to be able to leave the Patriots and get much of a contract elsewhere because of the injury issues this year and just the nature of the position. It's not a position where I think people are going to pay a lot of money to him. So maybe he'll come back on a 1-year deal and look to have a healthy 2023. Because he's a guy that I'd want to have around if you can make it work with him.
Yeah, no, I totally hear what you're saying, Bob. Those are definitely, good points and good things to keep in mind in this off season as we get close to the free agency and the teams has to make some, tough decisions on whether to bring those guys back or to let them go and try to, find upgrades and improve on those positions offensively. Wanted to stay on the offense here and ask, is this the worst offense you've seen, since you've been calling the Patriots? And why is the relationship, I feel like, so bad between Mac Jones and the coaches? Because I feel like it's not only Mac Jones and Matt Patricia. I feel like it's Mac Jones and the rest of the coaching staff that the relationship's not really going very well and isn't, what I'm saying, on good terms of where it should be as of right now. Why has that gone as bad as it's gone this year?
Well, I think it's really more, less about the personal, the relationships and any kind of, a personal animosity or anything like that. I don't believe that's the case. I think it's really just rooted in the offense itself and some of the things that were so successful last year, to go away from those and just I think the experience of being an offensive play caller and an offensive coordinator. And Matt came into this league and grasped a very complex offense, an offense that runs through the quarterback, and had a lot of control at the line of scrimmage. Really doing an admirable job for a rookie in that role. And we had a guy like Josh McDaniel, I thought was an excellent play caller. I think that there's also a feel for play calling. I think there's a knack in it. It's kind of like a pitching coach with the psychology of handling a pitching staff. Probably has a different temperament, different personality dealing with his pitchers than maybe, using the baseball analogy, a hitting coach might have with his hitters. Just regarding the mental part of each job. So I think in the quarterback's case, the fact that in 2022 Mac was ready to take a big step forward based on what they did in 2021, and now they changed the offense. They made the offense, I think, a lot more rudimentary. They wanted to simplify it. They wanted to streamline it, and he's a smart guy. He's a guy who, again, had a lot of control of a complex offense last year for a rookie, relatively speaking, in an organization that, had this long-time offensive coordinator who had a history of calling plays with the greatest quarterback of all time and grooming other young quarterbacks like Jimmy Garoppolo and Jacoby Brissett, and getting Matt Castle ready to come in, having never started a college game to take over for Tom in 2008. And now you've got a guy who's been coaching on the defensive side of the ball and also with limited experience as a head coach, who's really basically learning on the fly in that role with a different offense. And the quarterback's coach is in a similar spot. He played quarterback in college. He's been a special teams coordinator and a head coach of a team that really struggled offensively as well. So I just think it's a combination of a lot of different things, very unconventional move. And I think, the part of the frustration over the last 4 or 5 weeks, it's just kind of been bubbling to the surface, really going back to the summer in that regard. I do think it's important, guys, quickly to note too. We're talking about skill. I mentioned skill players, and we're talking about the offense. Then it all starts too up front. You got to be able to block. You got to be able to protect the quarterback, and I think that's been a big issue this year in terms of the communication along the line and also the execution of the offensive line. The Patriots got themselves in a bind with Isaiah Wynn, just a disappointment from the start. They shifted positions. It was a bit puzzling for him, I'm sure, because he was the left tackle. He was drafted in the first round, and he would have been a starting left tackle in the NFL as a rookie, if not for injury. He had that role as well for the team when he came back, when he was healthy, and then all of a sudden this offseason, they do make the move. I look at Cole Strange as a Division II player coming into the NFL. It's a big jump for him, and I'm not quite sure that the development or the lack thereof is traced simply because of the coaching situation. Your offensive coordinator is also your offensive line coach, and you go from only a few years ago, one of the most experienced, but certainly one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL, to again, Matt tried to pull double duty in roles that are really very new to him. And, Billy Yates, who's the assistant offensive line coach, as well, in a very unfamiliar spot, really with that position group, getting his, first, I think, measurable responsibility in that regard. So I think there's a lot of different things at play here.
Yeah, no, there certainly is, and that's a really good point that you bring up, that, one of the things that's really been holding this team back and why they haven't performed very well and been so inconsistent offensively is because the offensive line play has not been very good, and particularly in pass protection, and also just too many mistakes and too many penalties. You have the most penalized offensive lineman in Trent Brown, and also Isaiah Wynn, who's still one of the most offensive penalized offensive linemen, and the guy's been on IR for weeks and hasn't seen the field in weeks. And he's still up there among the worst penalized, offensive linemen in the league. So it's those tackle positions, as we all know, are very important, covering those, DNs and those edge rushers. Those certainly have to be addressed, and and they certainly need to add more depth to those positions for next year and moving forward. The other question I wanted to ask you was, I wanted to ask you about what do you do on a day to prepare yourself to call a game? Is there a particular routine that you go through to call, to get yourself ready to call a game, or, you just pretty much just go to the stadium and, get to your spot and get ready to call a game? What's your routine like as far as getting yourself ready to, to broadcast the game?
Yeah, there's a lot of homework that's involved, and it started today with Sunday's game in Buffalo. It starts with kind of reviewing the Patriots game that just happened. Yesterday was going down into the press conference room and asking some questions and listening to Belichick and some of the players, talk to us in the media, and then reading the game stories online, the newspaper reports, going over the box score and statistics from yesterday, some of the trends, looking at, some of the records or milestones, the 7th defensive touchdown, for example, Kyle Duggar with the 3 defensive scores. You start looking for little nuggets like that. And then as the week goes along, you start to compile information on the Patriots and the opposing team. I put together these big poster board cliff notes, if you will, cheat sheets that have information on every player that's on the depth chart: Patriots offense, Bills defense, Bills offense, Patriots defense. And, that kind of becomes my security blanket in the broadcast booth. And I work on that all week long, while also going out to Gillette Stadium and taking part in press conferences and try to ask some questions of players and coaches, and watching video. I'll watch the game tonight as we talk. We're recording this before the Bengals and the Bills play their key game. Take notes on that, watch some video later in the week as well on the Bills and the Patriots. And then, when you put all that information together, it all goes down on paper. You read stories out of Buffalo all week long too, and try to be as up to date on the Bills as you can. And then we travel to the game site, and on game day, get to the stadium a few hours before kickoff and refresh myself, highlight the notes, study them again a little bit, familiarize myself with the players as they go out on the field and warm up, just so that I don't have to look down at my chart when I'm calling the game, that I can look out there and immediately see that number 26 is Devin Singletary, or that, Cook is the other running back with the longer hair flowing down from the back of his helmet. You look for little characteristics like that. Who's got the red shoes? Who's got the red sleeves in the case of Matthew Judon for the Patriots? You watch warm-ups with that in mind, and just try to be relaxed, but at the same time, you want to be focused. And then when the game takes place, you just call what you see and try to stick to the nuts and bolts, to painting the picture of what's in front of you, making sure that you give the down and the distance, the time, the score, and so forth. And then kind of do your best to hit on the key storylines throughout the game. And obviously the main storyline in this one is it's about the playoffs. That's what's at stake. It doesn't really matter what the series record was last year, or some of the milestones for the Bills players, Patriots players might be outside of my case. I'll go into this game with some extra information on Devin McCourty, Matthews later, just in case it is their last game as Patriots. And I wanted to make sure that we touched on that yesterday because it was probably their last home game each. So those are the things that you think about, and some of the different steps that I take to get ready for a game.
What's dinner like with Zoe the day before the game? What do you guys go for dinner?
It's funny. When people ask me what it's like to work with Zoe, I always say it's exactly as you would imagine it. But I think the one thing that would surprise people is how the dinners are the night before games, because they're pretty quiet and low key. Usually, like Zoe and our producer Mark Capello like steakhouses, so we often go out for steak. If I join them, like now, COVID changed a lot because we didn't travel in 2020, and the last year a lot of times I just ate carry out or whatnot. This year it's kind of varied things a little bit, and when we do, when we have gone out, it's over the course of my 10 years now, 9 years, and however many months it's been, as John introduced me. It's been really low key. We talk a bit about the team, the game. He might tell some stories about his playing career, relate them to the team. A lot of the times, just personal talk. A lot of times, just looking at the phones and scrolling through the phones to see if there's anything online. Last minute before the game. It's not party time necessarily, but we try to have a good time and relax a little bit, have a drink or two, or three. It's pretty low key. It's not. That's why I say it. I think people would be surprised, but it's been a while. There's just been some different things where we've been. We had a staff station dinner, for example, in Las Vegas, and went to dinner with some clients before that game. And so it was that was more business than pleasure.
And my last question is, you guys are traveling to Buffalo, right?
Yes, sir.
And we always hear about home games in Buffalo, how crazy they are. Do you get a little more nervous? Like, do you look forward to the Buffalo games? Like, what's your feeling about traveling to Buffalo?
Yeah, I've always loved calling games in Buffalo. My very first Patriots game was at Ralph Wilson Stadium, New Era Field. Now I think whatever, Highmark Stadium, as it's known now, in September of 2013. And it's a great guys. The thing about like going to Buffalo as a broadcaster that you really like, the atmosphere is like a college atmosphere, and you guys, as you touched on, I mean, the fans are crazy. The fans for years, looked at the Patriots as the team that they couldn't be, that they had to be, that they definitely hated. We were the evil empire that rolled in there, and the fans were definitely amped up, probably more so than usual. And they are great football fans. I grew up 2 hours east of Buffalo. I was not a Bills fan growing up, but I know a lot of Bills fans, and they are great football fans. It's a great football town. There's always, it was even, a better atmosphere when the Patriots would come in, because there's a lot of animosity from them, they were loud, and they were into the games right from the start, even before we got into the stadium, driving past the parking lot to unload at the stadium. And then the stadium itself, it's like an old college traditional football stadium. It's an oval football stadium. And as a broadcaster, the broadcast booth is in a really good spot. It's a great place to watch the game. A lot of the newer stadiums, they're enormous. The broadcast booths often are like in the corner of the end zone. They don't give you a good view because they have all the what used to be the radio booths and the press boxes. All that space now is devoted to club suites and the big money ticket holders. Buffalo's still a throwback. It's kind of like an old school experience. So the fans are really into it. They're crazy. It's a great stadium to watch a football game. It's loud. You're right down there with the fans. And, lately, obviously last year the Patriots didn't have a good showing at all in the playoffs. But the game before that Monday night game, was a wild game with the snowy conditions and just a crazy outcome of the Patriots winning by only throwing a few passes. And some of the other games up there have been really competitive through the years. Even when the Bills weren't good overall, that first game that I mentioned, 2013, the Pats had to come back in the fourth quarter and win on a last-second field goal by Steven Gostkowski. So the games have usually been very entertaining, and they've usually, for the better part of my decade with the Pats, turned out in favor of the Patriots. Obviously, last year didn't go that way in the playoffs in a big way. The Bills blew us out, but nonetheless, it's a great place to call a game.
Bob, my last question for you. A couple things could happen here, where the Patriots, could have a better chance of winning, which is, Buffalo winning against, the Bengals and resting their starters next week, or the Chiefs losing, on Saturday to give, the Bills the division. Now, do you foresee this being the last game you broadcast this season, or, can we go out there and actually make something happen and give ourselves a chance here?
Yeah, John, I was asked earlier this morning on our flagship station in Boston, 98.5, if I thought the Patriots had a chance to win the game, even if the Bills rested their starters. And I do think the Patriots have a chance to win the game. I think a couple of things. I don't think the Bills' defense is. And granted, it's going to take the Patriots' best effort. I've talked too long about the Patriots' offense and the problems they've had, but I think they can run. I think they can run the ball on Buffalo defense. I don't think the Bills are as good defensively as they were last year. They've had too many injuries. Micah Hyde not having him out there, it's a big loss for them. And I think they've gotten some guys back. So that I think they're in a better situation than they were in the 2 to 3 weeks immediately before the Patriots game. They had played a couple of games without Tremaine Edmonds, for example. Jordan Poyer had been hurt. Those guys are back now. But I do think that the Patriots, can run the ball effectively enough, even if they play the Bills starters defensively, to stay in the game. It just comes down to can they control Josh Allen and not let him beat them on offense. And I think really the chances hinge on who's available in the secondary. Jack Jones won't play, as we know. He's on injured reserve. Will Marcus Jones be back? Jalen Mills. Jonathan Jones got banged up at the end of the Dolphins game. I think it's going to be extremely difficult for the Patriots to beat Case Keenum if he's the quarterback of the Bills, if they don't have some of those pieces back at secondary, or at least one of them in John Jones. I think, to ask Quandre Mosley and Tay Hayes to play even more snaps, for example, at cornerback against the Bills, that's a big ask, even if it's the backup quarterback. And I think, but I'm curious how Sean McDermott's going to play, depending on how the outcome goes against Cincinnati or what happens with the Kansas City game on Saturday night, because he may want to play his starters for a period of time, even if the game doesn't affect their seeding, just to have some momentum. It's the Patriots. Or he may just say, look, playoffs are more important. We're locked in our seed, and we're going to go with their backups. I think either way, it's a tough game. I think the Patriots can win the game, though. I really do.
Awesome, Bob.
Hey, that was awesome. I'll leave it at that. I don't know if I agree with you on that. I hope they do. I hope they prove me wrong. I don't really feel good about this game unless if, they somehow end up resting their starters and don't have to play the starters and have their seating locked up before. But it's just hard for me to, to trust this team and particularly trust this offense. I get they were a little bit better yesterday, but they were going against a depleted, defense and secondary, in the Dolphins. And, the Bills, they're going through some injuries defensively, but I still don't know if this team is good enough and has enough to be able to pull off the upset and win this game and get into the playoffs. I just don't know, Bob. Like, I hope you're right, but
Barry, believe me, I understand. Look, any given Sunday, right? The problem is it's not just offense. It's and the issues in the secondary with injuries, but it's special teams. Patriots haven't played well in special teams consistently. So they have to play their, again, it's a cliche, they have to play their best game far and away, and I think they have to have some help. And stranger things have happened though in the NFL. One thing about it is getting the Bills after a Monday night game on the road against Cincinnati, what figures to be a physical game and a hard fought game with a lot at stake for the Bills going into Cincinnati. Maybe that plays some role benefiting the Patriots. The Bills have won 6 in a row before playing the Bengals. So it's hard to sustain a streak like that in the NFL. And, maybe there's a hiccup for Buffalo on Sunday. And again, the Patriots, play their best. But you're right. Look, the Dolphins secondary knows Xavier Howard. It can't cross and out their cornerback. He's a special teams guy, and the Patriots took advantage of him. He had a couple of huge penalties and really had a tough time covering. The Pats only really had, I think, 2 what you would say were 2 really good offensive drives. So they're going to need to be a lot better. But I do think that there's a chance. How's that?
We shall see, Bob. We shall see. I hear what you're saying. We'll see what happens, and we'll hope for the best on Sunday against the Bills. And look forward to hearing you on the call.
Guys, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, Bob.
I don't think there's a better way to start off the year with our, little show here. So thanks for coming on, and, you're welcome to come back on. I mean, it's a pleasure for you to come back on here anytime you'd like. So again, man, Happy New Year, and, wish you nothing but success in this new year. So have a good night, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Likewise, John. All the best to you guys. Safe and happy 2023.
Thank you.
Talk to you later.
Thank you, Bob. Same to you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So that was to the Patriots, man. Bob Socci. You want to follow Bob? It's at Bob Socci, literally BOBSOCCI on Twitter. Guy is a great play-by-play broadcaster, man. He's really good at what he does. Make sure you're following him. Make sure you're following us on all platforms. We're at ProFan Sports on all platforms other than Instagram, and that's at ProFans_sports. Again, Happy New Year's to you guys. Thank you for supporting us. Make sure you're liking and subscribing to content. Share the content. It's the best way you can support the show. So, we're into the New Year, fellas. So until next episode, talk to y'all.
Peace out, everyone. Have a good week. See y'all next week.